This isn't an episode about telling you what to think or who to support. It's about why two millennials who once avoided politics realized they couldn't avoid it anymore. No one will have all the answers, but we think asking better questions is a good place to start.
Hi, I'm Prakriti.
Hi, I'm Ria.
And you're watching
Two peas on a pod.
We're just two millennials stuck between the boomers and the Gen Zs, and we're trying to keep up with both.
And we're exhausted. Especially exhausted given what's happening in the country for the last 35 days.
I don't have memory of a time when I've engaged this deeply with the politics of our country, read up about the history of our country. I literally don't know. I only remember dinner table conversations.
Gone back and just reread the facts, understand what your opinions are, and then, formulating them in real time. Which brings me to what was it like having dinner table conversations at home regarding politics? Because mine were a explosion.
I have no memory of being politically active in any sense, and that's shameful because I studied to be a journalist and I always wanted to be a journalist. I think apolitical was the stance of the community around me at the time.
Right.
It was very much, you're a middle class person. The only way you're going to get success is by working hard, studying, educating yourselves, getting a good job. And that narrative was deeply entrenched in all our conversations. Political was always considered also a very bad word.
Don't engage with it.
It's what people with clout do. It's what people with muscle power do. It's what,
It's what people with money talk about also. That was one narrative that, that we also had
Really?
around. Yeah, essentially, power and politics go hand in hand. And the norm has always been that, power and money go hand in hand. Basically, जिसके पास पैसा है, उसके पास power है.
For the same reasons that power and money go hand in hand, at least now that I think back, the larger narrative was that we literally cannot monetarily afford to get involved in a political movement.
But I'll tell you something also. I feel that came from a place where we were taught first secure your basics. First secure your basics. First secure your education, your job, your whatever the narrative was fed to us to have stability in your life. उसके बाद if you can have a political opinion, तो फिर ठीक है.
Acha.
What was it for you like? What was
this? Exactly. Don't
Yeah.
politics. Politics is not for us, the middle class people. It is for the people who have money and power.
Right.
Sure. I think the instruction from the parents was always stay in your lane, stay moisturized. The moisturization came later. Being focused and in your lane came much earlier.
Tell me something. Were you allowed to have an opinion while growing up, or was it something that was fed to you through parents, relatives, social conditioning, or your environment, or were you encouraged to have a voice or to just think about certain things in your own way, regardless of your age?
We are products of our parents.
Okay.
We are products of the immediate community that we're a part of for the first 5 to 10 years of our life. Because respect to parents is tied to unquestioned
And agreeing.
belief and agreeing with them
Right.
for a very, very long time, and sometimes even well unto your own parent, till you become a parent yourself, because you are taught that the definition of a good son or good daughter is unquestioned faith and belief in the parents' opinions. And so I'm very much a product of that. So yeah, my early opinions were very much colored by what, not just my parents, but what my community thought, what the people around me thought, and very dinner table political conversations driven by headlines, not even the body of the matter of journalism. And so when I did study to be a journalist, one of the biggest training was, headline ke aage bhi kuch matter karta hai. Dinner table conversations were very much hierarchical by age, saying you've not lived enough on the earth, so you don't know enough to question. Which I think for me as a millennial kid has been my biggest unlearning.
Oh, lovely.
What about for you?
Mine was quite opposite. I grew up in a household where there was like one parent who was focused on corporate sort of a lifestyle. Other was journalism. My mom was a journalist. So she came from a space where it was literally her duty to not have a stance, a rigorous stance about everything. So she would encourage us to have an opinion regardless your age, regardless, of how much your information, whatever information you have, or your exposure or anything. And I think at the earliest memory of her telling me, you need to have an opinion, or I will give you information for you to form your own opinion about it. I mean, she wanted me to think and to formulate my own opinion. Whether it was right or wrong is a separate conversation together. But her first thought was, what is your thought on it? I want to know what your thought is, not what the thought is based on what dad, your friends, or anybody says, but what do you think about this?
What was your source of information?
We were a household where we were divided between two sections of media. One was the television that came from whatever reporting was happening online, and my mum being a print journalist, there was always a plethora of newspapers in front of us, and we were encouraged to read, we were encouraged to ask questions. I remember my mum telling me, read this article. It was about the financial crisis of 2008. I still remember it was the Economics Times. They used to have like a those off-whitish sort of a paper, and she said, read about this. And my 7th standard brain was like, but I don't know what this means. And she said, read about it and tell me what you think of it. And then I became a bit, more interested to go and read about things, compare articles. I realized that two separate newspapers have two separate ways and two separate narratives of reporting a similar incident. So I think,
When did you stop?
when I went to college, I think one of the last times I remember engaging in a political event or reading about something very vehemently and being afraid of the situation of what's happening in our country was in 2008 during the 26/11 attacks, terrorist attacks. Deeply personal because my mother was at the CST station. My father was at Oberoi and Trident and Taj area. We were at home, my brother and I, and we had zero connection with them. All we knew is that that area was cordoned off. There were active shootings happening and people were dying. And we had no connection, no contact with them. And for a very long time, I was incredibly feeling unsafe in my own house, in my own country. There was a sense of, anything could happen, anything could go wrong, and my entire world could be shattered. I was glued to the television, and every piece of reporting that was happening on screen was genuinely giving me chills and shivers. And when, of course, I was one of the fortunate ones that my parents came home that night. And I remember telling myself, never again. I don't want to go through this roller coaster ride of anything.
And fear is the death knell of questioning and rationality.
Of course.
The deluge of information got to you.
Yeah, it did. Information overload, and it was happening like there was live reporting happening
Yeah.
every second, and you're not being able to make contact.
26/11 was the first time I engaged with live news. Because even as a student, I used to, whenever our class held the assembly in school, I would be the news reporter. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m., write down the headlines that were being telecast at the 5 a.m. slot, and go and read them out on the mic at the assembly. So I always knew just that much about television news. But I remember that Times Now coverage with Mahrukh Inayat, I think, was at the Taj at the time, is still the most visceral piece of TV information and TV news that I've consumed. This brings me to just the nature of visual news storytelling. The reason I prefer print journalism is that no matter how immediate the news, how big the event, your reflection, reporting, fact-based reporting of it always happens just a little bit later by someone who has been in that beat enough to know, ठीक है ये हुआ, इसके पहले ये भी हुआ था, ये भी हुआ था, ये भी हुआ था. There's a pattern they can draw. There is context that they can draw upon. They can't just open their cameras and say, ये हो रहा है, मेरी, according to me, this is wrong. But they can't simply give an opinion without the backing of a lot of knowledge, a lot of deep ground level understanding of how a local play happens, right? Who's involved? Which agency? Which institution? Which law? Which penal code? In print, you at least have the time to go back and say, oh, I may have, read it or understood it from this angle, but now that I'm sitting to write, I am getting better clarity.
Yeah.
Whereas live reporting, while it's very important to have as a piece of record, to form an entire narrative based on that opinion, which is a reactionary opinion, I think is a huge disservice to journalism itself.
Yeah, because then it's an opinionated piece of information, not based on actual facts.
It could be based on facts.
But where is your context?
Where's your context?
There's no context.
Right? And where's the time to have context when you have, by nature of design of platform, you have to give all packaged information.
And you want to sensationalize it. Now, breaking news.
In a minute. Countries are not made like that. Neither are they, broken like that.
No, correct.
You have context, people, वो 3-4 मिनट के event का एक्चुअल हिस्ट्री काफी महीनों का, सालों का भी हो सकता
अरे
है.
उसका ग्राउंड रियलिटी तो मेरी 50 साल पुराना हो सकता है, क्या मालूम
You don't
trigger
know.
तब का था. There used to be background, there used to be we didn't have a plethora of publications back then, of course, but even if there were two separate publications, their narrative or their way of reporting the story or the way to break the story was very similar, which was to tell what the actual event was. Right now we are getting personalized pieces of content based on my algorithm, based on who I follow, based on what I speak, while the event is happening the same in the country. Basis on my preferences and my thought processes, I'm getting certain publication information in my feed. And even though you have, say, an opinion, opposite opinion, you're getting an X amount of publications in your feed. There's nobody challenging me, there's nobody asking me to go and read up the other side of it. But when I am saying, say, I believe in 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm being served pieces of information that is confirming that yes, what you're thinking is correct, which is how we are polarized into completely separate corners of the world.
In print journalism, you are sometimes forced to confront objective truth that clashes with your subjective perception of narrative. And in that confrontation only you can become a good citizen.
Yeah, no,
Right?
correct.
Not everything is going to be as you wish it to be, because narratives are like that. As a literature student, as a humanities student, I know narratives can be viewed anyway. An event can be taken and a mythology can be created around it in any possible n number of ways towards n number of agendas. The job of social media is to further and make that happen. Social media by design wants more engagement, it wants more polarization. Journalism's job is almost the opposite. And I'm not saying there are no social channels that don't report bipartisan.
Right.
I'm not saying all social channels and all publications today are a problem. It's that the design of the platform is to not show you diversity unless you seek it. And humans are dumb.
And the algorithm is that, dictating what you're saying.
And we are dumb.
And
we
we are
will
dumb.
not seek
I
out
will
things.
see 3 reels about politics and I know everything about geopolitics. That
Right.
is my source of information, and it is not even challenging me enough to go and read up about it or to say that, okay, if this is what my opinion is, what is the other side of it?
Yeah.
I'm ready to believe that everything that I say is the truth.
Yeah.
And there are 3 people confirming that for me on social media as well.
And humans by default will not seek discomfort.
Correct.
And if you deliberately follow people you don't believe, you have to. That is your job as a citizen. As much as you can try, the algorithm should not push one narrative towards you.
But as millennials also, we've been very subconsciously conditioned to not have a strong opinion about politics in general. Or if you have it, you keep it to yourself.
Yeah, it has been a fear-based generation.
It has been.
Roots of it are in the boomer generation,
Yeah.
right? From where I stand, I see that makes sense for its economic time, right?
Okay.
When you are in a economic uncertainty, you have no option but to either conform to current politics because you want to gain a certain advantage, a certain leg up in life. And on the other hand, you are in this treadmill race of trying to find economic stability. So you have no time to question that, is the system even designed for it? And should I not ask a system for fundamental change rather than trying to constantly keep up?
Right.
You don't have time, emotional bandwidth, or the resources by way of money or social connection to make that happen. If you had to take a bird's eye picture, our great grandfather and grandfather were colonized. So they must have been fiercely political because they had to win freedom. In the later half of my grandfather's life and the earlier years of my father's life, they were too focused on building the basic blocks.
Roti kapda makan.
Roti kapda makan, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have any option but to stop being super political, focus on your economic
ambition.
personal ambition. When that happens, any political party becomes complacent, right? Which is why in the early years and towards the 70s, the then ruling government became super complacent and took our vote for granted.
Right.
Because you become apolitical, obviously anybody in power is going, oh, they don't care, we'll do what we want.
Yeah.
Then came another revolutionary age, my father's middle years, where it's like, oh, we need change, this government.
Oh, we've been in this mess for far too long.
Yeah, we've been in this mess for far too
change
long.
nahi hua hai.
They've tried to rule us with too much of an iron hand, then again society becomes very turbulent and economic success is sort of guaranteed. You know, tab tak sarkari naukriyan were sort of guaranteed and things like that. You have a very political generation.
Right.
Now back to the 90s. You're again building an economic stability, a global economy. Again, you go back to apolitical, right? And so in the 90s, which is when we were born, that apolitical continued till actually even our middle years, which we forget. But there was only one other agitation or two other agitations we were a part of in 2011 and 12, mass protests that had happened for the social economic causes of that time. Then we became political for that brief period and then we realized, shit, college se graduation ho gaye, ab now go back to looking for jobs.
हम फिर भूल गए.
हम फिर भूल गए political होना, right? And now the economy is so fundamentally changed that unless systemic change happens because of AI, because of the global world economic order, because of everything that's happening, all external, internal factors that are happening, again you have a systemic reset needed. And so now this generation has gone back to being political. Politics is very much a product of where you are in an economic moment of your country's timeline. Your asks will always depend on your immediate futures. If I feel threatened that my immediate future is uncertain, then I have no reason but to look at, is the system changing enough to keep up with my needs?
And for that, you need to be able to read. You need to be able to look up things. You need to be able to talk about this. Everything deserves, like, no matter what the event is, no matter what the piece of news is, everything deserves at least 5 minutes of Googling before it becomes a personality trait.
Exactly.
And we label it as, wrong,
Yeah.
leftist, rightist, and, those kind of
Right?
words.
It is important to remember that even you and I do not know what right-wing means.
Yeah.
Because right-wing or any kind of extreme political stance is a combination of two things. What is the ideological base they are built on, which means what is their vision of a population of a country for a country, and what is the economic policy that they follow. Same for left. Left-wing has a certain philosophy, certain value, set of principles and values that they are guided by, and a certain economic policy that comes out of it. In our country, there is no left and right wing. There's largely only a centrist policy of economic convenience. We don't know these terms. I'm also just saying with a very bare basis.
We're also looking it up.
We are
to
looking it up
understand.
live in the background.
To add on to here, given the current political temperature in the country, it's forcing us to go and read up about these things.
And that is the least. You may not attend a single protest.
Yeah.
You may not agree with a single demand of the students.
Right.
Even if you do nothing, it is at the end of the day your duty to say, why am I labeling this other faction by this term? Right? Why am I calling this particular demand a vested interest?
Or why are you against it? I'm against it because she's against it.
Right?
That's
I'm
how
against
it
it
works.
because my local politician told me. I'm
Yeah.
against it because my news media told me. And just the nature of how both political movements and news media has evolved, I feel like it's almost a wake-up call to say, you know what? Do I know the history of right-wing, left-wing politics in the country?
Do I know where it stemmed from?
Do we know our rights under certain impositions of law? Do we know which individuals in power versus which individuals not in power were actually on the other side? And that happens through every government in the last 70 years. Right? Do we know our own constitution and Indian penal code? Do we even have a bare bones understanding of it beyond what that little WhatsApp forward tells us?
Or that little end part of our civics textbooks used to have.
It's like we stopped studying what democracy means in active life after 10th standard boards.
But we also stopped practicing it in a way.
Because we just disengaged. We assumed we know these things, and the powers that be, the media that be, from all factions, all parties have just capitalized on that static knowledge. What are our duties as democratic citizens? To demand of our local MLAs, if you're in your neighborhood, who are you going to go to if something goes wrong?
Yeah.
You know, we are very privileged bubbles, privileged capitalist bubbles. If something goes wrong, I always know a person who knows a person.
Who knows a person?
I never have to actually go myself to a party office, and unless it's a form signature कि मुझे ये paper देना है, ये board exam का, I will never have visited any of these official desks. When we discussed everything that was happening in the last 40 days, we realized हमको सिर्फ labels आते हैं. We just know how to call things by the labels that media
हमको सिर्फ terminology आते हैं, group करना आता है.
group करना आता है कि if you say this, you're this.
And if you don't believe in this, then you're this.
Right?
And
You
we can't be friends.
Yeah, and we will not take those names because
Yeah.
you and I both know that is
What we're talking about.
what we're talking about. But we realize that even we are not absolved of the blame of actually being quite ignorant as citizens. You know, if someone says a particular act is unlawful, I have not once in the last 32 years of existence gone and said, oh, is it really unlawful or are you just telling it to me? So I love the line you said. Everything you hear today, 5 minutes of Googling, not AI, but actual Googling on an official website of a government.
Comparing notes, I feel like somewhere we just forgot what is it to have an opinion or to know the two sides of the coin.
And where your opinion is grounded.
I remember in school we used to have debates, and there used to be a reason why we're having a debate. But they're talking.
The beauty of it was if I ever mentioned to my teacher that no, I'm technically I'm against it, then she'd put me in the pro party.
Why? Because it's opening your mind.
Yeah.
You need to be able to also be okay. If you support say X, I can't be like no, but I can't be friends with you because I support Y. Understand why she's supporting X. Make your opinion about it. Go read up about it. Go talk to people about it. And then even after that, you believe that no, actually, you know what? I'm very staunch to my belief, and I still believe that what I'm supporting is correct for me. Fair enough. Because then you have the empathy to understand that that person has their own set of opinions, why they are supporting whoever they are.
I think for one day we should all make this experiment where we deliberately, even though it's going to give us such prefrontal cortex pain because it's going to challenge every opinion of ours.
And you can't just, I think doom scrolling is also a big part
100%,
of this.
and that exists for all kinds of, information. WhatsApp ho, Instagram ho, there's conspiracy theories galore everywhere towards every agenda. It is now an independent person's duty to find why is something labeled a vested interest. It's vested interest of whom, and what is the outcome if that is unsuccessful, and what is the outcome if it's successful. We will find that 60 to 70% of what we term as vested interest is actually just a labeling of vested interest. Maybe the foundation of that demand is very valid, but the way it has been put forward, the way it has been portrayed, that has become vested interest.
So then the entire what you're fighting for goes down the drain, no?
Because you don't know your own standing.
Do you think that two people who believe in two completely opposing ideologies can still be friends?
They should.
In fact, that is the foundation.
That is the foundation, right? And I have seen so many posts since yesterday. Today, we're recording this on 26th July. 25th July was obviously one of the most politically charged days of the country. And I saw so many people put out reels and posts saying that, of course, I will not be friends with a person who does not believe in my fundamental right to live, exist. Fair. I get it. And I can speak as a very privileged person. But we are already divided. If you and I do not make that effort to open up our hearts and minds to at least each other as friends, in the capacity of friends, then what hope do we have of uniting anybody? If I don't listen you out, and I can counter you. And I can come with an army of facts, and you can come with your army of facts, and we can look it up together on a common portal and say, oh, I was wrong. These 5 things I have been fooled to. And you can say, oh, these 5 things I was wrong. We've understood each other. We have united across, you may still believe in an ideology. I may still believe in an ideology. But if fundamentally we both just want the good of the nation.
Or a common cause.
A common cause that helps in the building of our country, then our ideological differences, we will find that they only exist in the path to how.
Isn't that what you just said a more refined and toned down version or definition of politics?
It is the exact definition of politics. Being political does not mean that a particular party joined a particular civic movement. The exact definition is that being political means raising issues and bringing about systemic change. What is actually the official definition of politics? Sometimes it's good to know where did Bharat Mata Ki Jai come from, where did Vande Mataram come from. What does political mean?
Struggle.
It's a way groups of people make decisions,
Share power,
and
run a government in the process of deciding who gets what, when, and how in a society.
Literally dialogue. Literally saying you and I will sit on the same table towards a common good,
And even though we might be of completely two separate opinions.
right?
Yeah.
That's why men and women can be friends.
Yeah.
Or should be. That's why you don't. Yes, there is an exception I will make. Is if you believe in the destruction of my existence and identity,
Then
that makes
the crux
sense.
of
Then
humanity.
it becomes safety. Then it
Yeah.
becomes survival instinct, right? If I'm a woman, and if you don't believe that a woman has a right to say equal pay,
or equal opportunity.
right to vote, if you think she should be kept in a parda, then I don't think I can be friends with you, because now you have at the my very existence now is a discomfort to you, and then of
And
course
you're controlling it.
and you're controlling
Yeah,
that
so
narrative, and
that's-
you are controlling my existence, then I can't be friends with you.
Correct.
But if all you believe is, hey, I want a developed country, you think we should develop this way, I should think we should develop this way, then I feel like I will always say my best, biggest, longest effort will be towards finding the common ground of the how.
Correct.
What, when,
Yeah,
and how,
yeah,
right?
no.
Because that's how we unite. No two people are the same. If you think you and I are the same under one cause, we will be divided under another. If ideological differences are going to divide us, today's ideology has united us, sure, but it has no foundation. I can't imagine a country that will be united in the long run if it can't resolve those differences interpersonally in the short term as well. Right?
True.
Have that dialogue. And I think that is the beauty of being a millennial today, is that we are old enough to remember a longer span of history. We are old enough to remember and empathize with why the boomers believe what they believe. We are also very politically energized by Gen Z's action first approach.
Right.
While having that therav to say, you know what, but this demand of yours there has no basis. You cannot directly jump from here to here. There are steps to take.
You have to follow protocol. You have
And
to
if
go
you've
through
not
a-
followed protocol, then that jump makes sense, right?
Action has to come with reform steps to also sustain it for a longer
Right.
period of time, because we're a generation who has been given promises and said we'd fulfill all of these promises, but even though they've been fulfilled, there's no sustainability, there's no accountability, there's no guarantee that this is going to last. So it's just given to us, and we're just going to assume that it's going to last
Yeah.
forever. And could be taken away whenever,
Yeah, and
need be.
love that you mentioned promises, because a promise is a large statement. The how, here's what we will do, here's what we will do, here's what we will do. That's how you achieve any kind of progress, whether it's country level, your corporate progress, it all happens through that, right? You have your KPIs per year.
Yeah.
तुम एक दिन में CEO नहीं बन जाते, तुम एक दिन में डायरेक्टर ऑफ मार्केटिंग नहीं बन जाते, तुम पहले साल में कुछ करते हो, फिर दूसरे साल में करते हो.
एक तरीका होता है.
तरीका होता है, right? If I go ads and if I'm not a director of marketing, I'll be nothing. I mean, that's just bull. I need to prove it through my work. I need to prove it through results. And I think that accountability, that standard should be maintained for everybody in all kinds of positions of power, private, public, government, personal.
We're going to leave this conversation with more questions than answers. Being pro-nation doesn't mean you're agreeing on everything with someone. It means you care enough to know better. Maybe that's our biggest millennial realization, because politics isn't only about elections or protest or one victory. It's about people. It's about us. It's about our everyday. And no matter how much you run away from it, politics will find you. And when it does, will you be paying attention?
Thank you for watching. I hope you Google everything you read in the news tomorrow.
Yes, please.